Okay, welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 184 with my guest, Dorian Wallace. Dorian is a fellow Ohioan. Um, he's a composer, performer. He lives in New York City, and I've come across Dorian in various sort of contexts in the music world, but mostly on social media, where Dorian is an advocate for free speech. He also infiltrate is the wrong word, but he goes into a lot of far right-wing blogs and talks to people and engages with them. And so I have this odd respect for Dorian in that context. So I always enjoyed talking with him. And we talk today about politics, but we talk about free speech. We talk about a bunch of stuff. But I always enjoyed chatting with Dorian. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dorian Wallace.
It's a baby. It's very surreal. Nothing makes you feel more like an adult than having a kid in the house. Like,
Why do you say that? I mean, I think I know why, but why do you say that?
well, my life has been a fantasy life. I was in the military and then went to being a composer. Like these like,
Yeah.
none of it's like just going to like a 9 to 5 ever.
Right.
And like all of a sudden, gotta fucking take care. It's like, oh right, like bedtime. That
I
kind
love
of
how you're
stuff.
like, my dream life is I was in the military and then I became a composer.
Yeah.
Said no one ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So your daughter's name is what?
Her name's Ildiko Virginia Wallace.
Ildiko. Where did
Yeah.
that name come from? I've seen you do the hashtag Ildiko.
Yeah.
I didn't want to ask until we met. So how'd that come about?
Yeah, so but are we recording now? I just realized.
Do you want to say that we're officially on the record?
Sure, I'm down. I don't
We're
care.
officially on the record. Welcome to
All right.
the end of 2020. Ildiko, Virginia.
Yeah, Ildiko. No, so my wife is Hungarian, Heinel, and Ildiko is a Hungarian name. It's Attila the Hun's third wife. It means warrior.
Whoa.
Yeah, so we wanted to have the connection to her Hungarian roots, because her mom is, moved to the States from Hungary in her late 20s. So she's
Okay.
very much Hungarian. Heinel went to the Franz Liszt Academy for her master's. They're all fluent in Hungarian. I eat a lot of Hungarian food because my wife makes it, which is super
Palinka?
awesome.
Palinka? Is that the alcohol?
Yeah, palinka. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's like their drink, their official alcoholic.
Is it pear liqueur? Is that what it is?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I had a
But
Hungarian student who brought a bottle back
oh,
as a
excellent.
gift. So
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. Like, when we went to Budapest, like, because I had never been there before, but like every meal you do the palinka shot. It's like, all right, cool, Hungarians. But yeah, and then Virginia is my maternal grandma's name. So,
got it.
so it was like we'll like have like some kind of connection to the Hungarian side. And there's something about like her first name, Ildiko, like people are just gonna go, what is that? So it'll, there's some psychology to it.
And is Virginia, your grandmother is from Ohio? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
so
from Ohio.
It's the
Yeah.
Hungary of the Midwest, as I like to say.
Yeah. That's
Columbus is the Budapest of the Midwest.
yeah. Oh man, that is weirdly accurate. Like it's like no one really wants to be there, but if you leave, you failed.
I prior to the pandemic, I did a bit of traveling and we did a show in I think it was where the frick was it? Finland, Turku, Finland. And all my friends were like, "Oh, you're going to Finland! I can't wait to hear what it's about." And then I got off the plane. I was like, "This is Canton, Ohio. This looks like Canton, Ohio. This is no different than like going to Belden Village. Like there's just pine trees everywhere. There's snow. It's like moderately hilly, only because you're at the foothills of something. You're not really in a mountain. It's like non-committal on every front. It's like Finland sucks, but except every building has a sauna in it, so it's totally way better than Canton. But
yeah. Canton does not have a sound unit in every building.
no, sorry, a sauna, like a sauna.
Oh, sauna.
Yeah.
Definitely does not have that.
Yeah. Anyway, well,
Yeah.
Dorian, let's get to hear why we are here to begin with. We've already dabbled
totally.
this to order. You and I did a podcast. Is that your walking stick?
It is.
Nice.
Yeah, I'll actually explain
Please do.
that in a little bit.
We had a podcast. Was it during the pandemic? Was it?
Yeah, it was right at the beginning,
Okay, that feels
like
like
in
years ago.
March.
Oh yeah, okay, all right. We talked about free speech, and I remember
Mhm.
you saying something along the lines of that you were a free speech absolutist, and then I asked you a question, and you were like, "Well, I guess I'm not an absolutist," and like
Yeah.
we said, it was lovely. But there has been a lot since then, and I kind of wanted to end my year talking with you, for better or worse,
Yes.
because you engage on social media with politics way more than I feel like I am comfortable with, and I'm always jealous of people who are not afraid
Hmm.
to go hard and go ham on politics, or to just do have a hot take. Like
Hmm.
I've been on the I don't want to say I've been on the Biden train because that makes me feel like I was going to buy a T-shirt and a hat and a pennant and hang it in my room. Like, even though I have an Obama poster hanging in my room, just full
Yeah.
disclosure. I listen. I was caught up in the hope and change thing too, but
Yeah.
I I felt afraid to even say that I back in 2016, 17, whenever Biden or like all of the candidates came on the stage, there were like 20 of them. I was like, Biden's the only person I think like I voted for Bernie in the primary against Hillary, but I was just like, I've been on the Biden train, but I was kind of afraid to because
Hmm.
anytime you said something about Biden, it was like you implied that moderation was okay. And
Hmm.
in this
Hmm.
world where somebody like Trump had the bully pulpit, moderation was a sign of complicity, or you were okay with some version of the status quo, which I'm not going to disown. It's like, of course, your Venn diagram overlaps with the status quo somewhere. Dorian, if you went out to get coffee today, you sort of overlapped with the
Well, the fact
corporatist.
that we're on Zoom right now, there's an overlap. Like we
Yeah.
are,
So
we are part of corporate culture,
right.
just
And
by, yeah.
so anyway, just again, I don't have an answer. I just kind of want to
Mhm.
talk to you a little bit about like, I guess I want to ask you a question about myself.
Yeah, please.
Why do, why do you think I am so terrified to say that I think Joe Biden is the best possible choice for us right now? Why have I been afraid to say that for the last
Mm.
couple years? What is it about our body politic? And when I say body politic, I mean everything from like Mitch McConnell vetoing or refusing to bring up the $2,000 to whether or not it happens is another story. But like
Yeah.
this sort of like politics of the moment as being a definition of you as a person.
Hmm.
I have a hard time trafficking with this idea that you can't change your mind. Anthony Fauci's the devil because back in February he said masks weren't necessary because he was trying to keep hospitals stocked with them. Like this idea that all of a sudden you can't change your mind, you can't learn from something. It's just a trend I feel like. And then we texted a bit about the Steve Reich thing in
Hmm.
September,
Hmm.
whenever that came up. I have felt like there's a general sort of illness in our body politic, whether it be in contemporary music or just in general. And I've done a lot of self reflection, and I don't think I have any clear answers. So that's why I wanted to talk to you, Dorian. I need answers. God damn it.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's my main premise. I don't have a good question there, but like,
man, yeah. So, a couple of things. And keep in mind, like, I don't want to project onto you, but I'm sure
yeah,
things are
sure,
going to be projected.
we're humans.
Yeah. But yeah. So, it's funny, man. I float in such a weird sphere of the world. Like, I am very left wing in my ideology,
Mm,
but in that circle, in like I'm talking the most left wing places, like I get shit on for like being cool with liberals. But then like in the like authoritarian versus libertarian thing, I'm on the left sphere of that. And I'm like willing to hang out with right wing like libertarians and like talk to them. And like shit gets that kind of thing goes down. But then in libertarian circles, it's like don't trust him, he's a dirty commie. Like it's like
yeah,
that,
yeah.
so it's like it's this really bizarre one thing social media has done. And I'm not an anti-social media person. I think it's actually I still think the benefits outweigh the problems. I think Donald Trump showed us how much social media can be exploited. I mean, there are views that I don't even know where I stand anymore because of just going through the last 4 years.
Like what? If you
Um,
don't mind me, I don't want to get us
oh
on a
yeah, yeah,
tangent, but
yeah,
like what?
yeah. Well, I don't know when Facebook does the fact checking. I don't
Mm,
know if I agree with that, but I understand why they're doing it.
mm,
Because it's like it's only helping fuel the divide. If you are getting something that you consider a fact said by a giant media corporation that it's not true, that's going to come off very conspiratorial.
mm-hmm.
But on the other side of it, it's like, yeah, like, but we literally have a president who will blatantly lie via Twitter. Like he'll just make something up that can, you know, at least cause some really uncomfortable conversations within a family, and at worst can even lead to acts of violence.
Well, and can be
Mhm.
or can be misconstruing or misrepresenting a private briefing he was given that very morning by the
Mhm.
CIA. And it's like, listen, we can talk all we want about the nefarious, like the ways the CIA or the FBI, like, and I'm not that steeped in it, but yeah, they've made mistakes and they've made callous decisions to do one thing or the other. But the
Mhm.
one thing you can't say about the CIA and the FBI is that every day they are constantly monitoring things to find out information about
Mhm.
hopefully people who are trying to hurt us or steal something from us or do things like that. Of
Right.
course, there's other motives, other things get woven into that. But if you just squint at the FBI and the CIA, when they walk into that Oval Office every morning and hand the president a booklet that's like that thick and it has all of the things going on in the world, not
Mhm.
that they're all true, but all of those things have been poured over by people who, by and large, have dedicated their life to investigating information that's hard to get. And
Mhm.
so when the
Mhm.
president then turns around and is like, nope, it's like, hold up a second, bro. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
this
So
is not the same thing. We can't be, this is not, you can't, that, listen, maybe they're a deep state. Maybe they hate you.
right.
Maybe they hated Obama. But,
I mean,
I mean, come
just
on
to
now.
put it out there, like as well, anybody I know who went into, either like the FBI or the C, like dude, I'm friends with an intel guy who works with the CIA now.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's an army buddy,
Yeah.
and like, just to like, I don't want to completely generalize, but generally people in that kind of enforcement agency are gonna be Republican. Like they're gonna be Trump voters.
Mm.
They tend to be pretty objective regarding the way that they analyze situations, but it's just so weirdly conspiratorial that it's like
Mm-hmm.
there's literally you like Donald Trump probably has a huge base in the FBI and CIA, but because they were investigating him, all of a sudden they're the deep state. It's just
Mm-hmm.
it's complicated, man. Because well, so sorry, just to go back a couple steps. So, I think that social media uh, has affected the way we communicate particular ideas, meaning that um, even things like when you're getting into a fight with someone you don't know, uh, you know the first point is if you were in face to face with this person, like there's no way
Right.
the two of you would be speaking this way to one
But
another.
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I just had this very thing happen this morning. There's a guy that
Yeah.
I was friends with in college. I still am friends with him.
Mhm,
I won't
mhm.
say his name. You may actually know of him because he's from the Akron area and he went to the University
Yeah.
of Akron and we've crossed paths. He's from the steel band world and we were arguing about something on something I posted and said something along the lines of this thing is this and this thing is this, and we went down this whole thing where he was like, you are not, you're not capable of seeing anything, and I'm like, you're not capable of seeing anything either, like, and I'm just like, what are we doing? Like,
Yeah.
this sort of conversation, social media is not
Mhm.
allowing us. And I said something to him and I was like, I think we're done here, and he's like, I will not be silenced, I'm going to unblock. I was like, listen, blocking you is silencing you. I'm not blocking you. I'm just saying I'm not engaging in this conversation anymore. And like he was not able
Yeah.
to see this, and it was like, I know I have blind
Yeah.
spots. On the other hand, I don't. I have dark this dark feeling that I don't think there's an out here. I think
Hmm.
we're swirling the drain, and it's just like we're just going to be arguing until we're down. And
Hmm.
I mean, it makes me. I get like I see you post stuff about Bernie or about Biden or about Trump or whatever, and because I think you're more versed in that world, or at least you feel more confident saying, I don't actually know a lot about politics. I follow enough to be dangerous, but I don't follow right wing daily stormer trolls like you do. Like
Oh God,
that's
yeah.
not my wheelhouse. But why is it that I know you, and if
Mhm.
we have a conversation like this? Oh, part of this conversation I had, as I said, if we were doing this face to face, it'd be different. He's like, no, it wouldn't. I was like, well, then I don't know what to tell you. It would be
Yeah, it's
different.
like that's weird, man.
Yeah, it'd be totally different. Talking to face is
Yeah.
different. But like, why is it that when you post something, I know damn well you're on the other end of that post, but I'm afraid to comment.
Hmm.
Not because of you, but just because like I don't know how many people are hiding behind Dorian Thomas's comment threads just waiting to pounce on some moderate who they think is like complicit in the downfall of America
So
due to corporatist policies or whatever, like
so yeah, that's actually I will tell you, I think you just helped me figure out the difference in uh the comfortability
hmm,
on social media.
hmm,
So when I engage on social media, it is rarely about if I get into an argument with somebody or a debate with somebody,
hmm,
it is rarely about me trying to convince that person's mind. I'm usually of the mindset that this person has their views and I
hmm.
have my views, and we're not like this Facebook conversation is not going to be the thing that makes us go, oh. However, there is an audience of people reading and watching. And I feel that if I can represent myself as being as calm and open minded, even if it's like a fucking fascist or the most corporate Democrat or any the most insane Maoist communist, which that's a whole group I've been engaging with lately that I've got some
I saw you
stories
were
there.
taking a social media break. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
who's Dorian talking
Yep.
to now?
Yeah, well, oh man, it's actually it's been the really extreme uh like Maoist communists who are they're fucking insane. And then I joined an anarcho-capitalist group, which is like the most in like they're basically feudalists, but they won't say it. Like they like want to deregulate things so much so they can just have unlimited corporate power, but they won't say that until you like just ask them
Yeah,
questions and eventually
corporate power is
like
the devil until you have it, and then it's
yeah.
awesome. Like
Well, it's like the thing that really blew my mind. Somebody told me that it was like if you keep pushing an anarcho-capitalist long enough just with questions, if they answer them, eventually they'll get to supporting slavery. And it was one of those like I had heard about it, but then I was actually in a debate with somebody, and the guy literally what this blue line is blowing my mind.
it looks great. It's like
Yeah, it's super cool, but I just can't figure out where it's coming from.
you're inspiring a rainbow, but only 1/6 of a rainbow or
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly,
Just the
exactly.
blue.
It's the B from Biv.
Just let it. Yeah. RG. What is it? RG
Roy
Biv.
Roy G. Biv.
Roy G Biv.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
But yeah, like so I literally was in a conversation with this guy, and at one point it was like, well, so what do you think about slavery? And he was like, well, listen, if people choose that they want to be slaves, I support it. And it was like,
All of
and
a
it's like you
sudden,
hear
him
about
and
something, but then
yeah.
you actually experience it, and it's just like, what the fucking fuck?
Well, didn't
Um,
Kanye say something along those lines?
I'm sure he did. I,
Like
I don't I
you
don't really
chose to be
follow much of
yeah.
Kanye, to be
I try
honest.
not to, but it crops up
Yeah.
enough where I'm like,
Uh,
oh my god.
he's yeah. But yeah, so I think it's about the intention. And so I think and this might be correct me if I'm wrong. Could I try to describe
Please, yeah.
something about you?
Yeah.
So when you are commenting, like let's say you see me post something completely ridiculous, and you know it's me. Um, if you are commenting, it's to literally engage with me, but because it's out in the wild, you don't know who could be watching it or seeing it. Um,
Yeah, there's a weird. It's like the. Do you know that last episode of Seinfeld where
yes.
they're walking down the street and the person's getting beat up on the other side of the street?
Mm-hmm,
It's like it's
mm-hmm.
amazing. I feel like Seinfeld, like Jerry Seinfeld. You don't have to like all of his one liners and his comedy,
Oh, I love Seinfeld.
but
He's like, yeah.
that episode to me was just the sort of like, just remember, none of you will do anything when somebody else is getting beat up on the other side of the street. Like that's the last thing they left us with was the stand. What was they called, the bystander syndrome or whatever it is, where like
Yeah.
when there's enough people around and you see someone getting assaulted on the other side of the street, you assume someone else will deal with it. So your culpability is just statistically less, and so you just feel less
Mm-hmm.
It's not something you're consciously doing. It's just if it was you and this other person, you would be more apt to at least call the police, let
Mm-hmm.
alone physically interject. You know, it happened again this morning on this thread with my friend who I didn't agree with. Like somebody commented like, Quillen, you need to take out your trash in 2021, like clean up your friends list, responding to him, talking about him as if he were trash I needed to take out. And I was like, that's not how I curate my friend list. Like, so
Wow.
why would somebody comment on my post? Why would anybody have an engagement with me if they feel like somebody else is going to randomly chime in and say, you're trash, take this out? So I know you, Dorian Wallace, are not that way. But because I see it happen enough, there's enough of the
Yeah.
like, I'm not sure that if I said, hey, Dorian, I think when you say things about Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders as being these two separate ends of the polls, and I say, I don't know, bro, they've both been in the Senate for pretty much longer than anyone else
Mm-hmm.
in human history. So maybe they're closer on this. Like, I feel like if I said that, I'm
Yeah.
unsure enough about who's going to throw something at me. I'm unsure enough about how I'm going to be defended that I just don't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's on your page, let alone someone
Yeah.
else I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
No, it's I had a really bad incident like a year ago where there was this woman uh I know her from actually kind of just from like the free speech community.
Mm,
Um and she just went on this really really gross like transphobic thing on one of my threads,
like what? What was she saying?
just like that. uh it was around the idea that trans women are not actually women and it's actually harming women, but it that was her premise, but her language was pretty
What was she talking about? Was she talking about sports? Was she talking about like
no,
society, like running a
she was
business,
talking
or
about society as a whole,
okay?
like basically that transgender people were mentally ill,
Oh, okay.
and in that sort of realm. And to be totally upfront, I'm in I'm a music therapist now, and I'm pretty up to date on the literature, and it's like it's not a mental
Yeah,
illness,
yeah. I
like
mean,
it's
people
not
said gay people. I mean, it was in the DSM
yeah,
up until like 19 something or other,
yeah,
80 or
yeah,
90, whenever gay,
1950 1956 or 8,
yeah, when
I
gay
think.
people were mentally ill. You know, it's like,
Yeah, it's one of those things where this woman was speaking so confidently about
mm-hmm,
gender dysphoria, which is different than somebody who's transgender. Somebody who's transgender can have gender dysphoria, but it's not classified as a mental illness. And so I was, instead of leaping down her throat for how wrong she was, I was just like, hey, check out these articles. And, just I literally posted like 20 different articles. But this other guy jumped in and like started calling me like a transphobic sympathizer, and like was saying like this woman's an evil piece of shit, like she's completely wrong, like you must enjoy placating these people. And like it got to the point where I literally had to private message him and was like, dude, I literally have a tactic I'm doing right now. I 100% agree with you. I think she's completely wrong. However, I also know her in this other sphere
Mm,
where I didn't even know this part of her existed.
mm-hmm.
Like, so like I'm trying to educate her. I'm trying to give her tools to learn, and it literally can't happen right now because you're on there, like being crazy. And keep in mind, like this was like another guy that like I'm friends with in another circle, and it was like, dude, like you're not wrong in your opinion, but you're actually getting in the way of like what I'm trying to do, which is honestly, it was more in the mindset of trying to get her out of this ignorant, mental space.
Well, how do you feel like? Well, I guess I don't want to ask. I want to be
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
careful that you and I don't get into the realm of theorizing on how other people think. I kind of want
Mm-hmm,
to be
mm-hmm,
sure that
mm-hmm,
we're
mm-hmm.
we're keeping this to you and me,
Yeah,
because that's really the only two things we can talk authoritatively on. And even then, it's like I feel like I don't know. Like I change my opinion every 5 fucking minutes. But
yeah,
like,
yeah.
what is
Exactly.
it about our? What is it about like? Well, for you, what
Mhm.
are you unable to deal with when someone presents you facts? I'll speak for me personally. The thing, my wife was in seminary early on, and I was living with her, and I was being exposed to, quite frankly, a lot more diversity in seminary than I was with So Percussion early on, like 2006. When I first joined, it was
Mhm.
just like, I'm out of school and I'm like trying to figure out New York. Like the diversity of opinions I was getting from Stephanie's friends, which were way more gay, way more trans, way more black, way more white, way more
Mhm.
Baptist, way more Jewish and Muslim, and all of these things than anything I was getting in the music world. Um, so I had this, I don't want to say an acceptance of like other lifestyles. Like I have questions. I'm just like, oh, I don't understand someone who's trans. I'm not trans.
Mhm.
I would love to know more. I had folks in my life in 2007 who were like telling me like, "Oh, I'm a man, but I was born a woman."
Mhm.
Well, that's a crazy thing to say out loud in 2007. Tell me more. Like, and we could drink beers and we were chatting. This was well before anybody was talking about this on social media. Now, when I heard a podcast with Joe Rogan talking about,
Mhm.
I follow fighting pretty obsessively. Like, I'm not a fighter, but like I love watching boxing and mixed martial
Yeah,
arts and
yeah.
things like that. It is true that when a fighter has been a man their whole lives and decides at age 32 to be a woman, that they absolutely have the right to do that.
Mhm.
When you're fighting another woman who's been a woman their whole life biologically and hasn't had 32 years of testosterone and hip, just different things forming in different ways,
Mhm. Mhm.
that does provide a physical advantage that you can do real damage with. And you need to, there is a conversation to be had around that in combat sports, right?
Mhm.
When I heard that first, I was like, that can't, like, no, we can't tell people that they are not certain things. And it's like, well, okay, I understand. And then a woman named Ashley Evans Smith, who's a fighter, fought another fighter who didn't disclose they were trans. And afterwards was like, I have never felt strength like that. I've never felt another woman squeeze me the way Fallon Fox did.
Mhm.
And that is something we need to disclose. Okay, that's a nuanced discussion we can have. But on
Mhm.
Facebook,
Who are the names of those two
sorry,
fighters? I
Ashley Evans Smith is the female fighter. Fallon Fox is a
Yeah.
female fighter, but is trans. And so Fallon Fox was a man most of her life and transitioned to become a fighter and fought, I think, I want to say three other fighters before she disclosed that she was trans.
Mm. Mm.
I think there's issues around this in weightlifting too. I know that there's a lot of like records that are being shattered by trans athletes. And again, it's like no one's saying that. And so anyway, I saw a
Mm.
conversation happening about this on social media around Ellen Page, who's not
Mm.
Ellen Page, and I cannot remember their name now. So please forgive me. Ellen Page is now trans, and they were saying all this stuff about like Eddie Izzard. It's like, oh, Eddie Izzard hasn't been in anything. I'm just like, do you know who Eddie Izzard is? Like, hold up a second. So I posted a Joe Rogan podcast with Eddie Izzard where he's like, Eddie Izzard's there as a female talking about the 50K
Mhm.
marathon she ran, all this stuff, and they were like, it was like crickets. They'd never heard of Eddie Izzard, and I guess I'm wondering for you, like,
Mhm.
how do you I mean, where do you start if like the answer is like Ellen Page is the example for trans people all over the world, no questions asked, you can't question
Mhm.
Ellen Page, and putting up a Joe Rogan podcast with Eddie Izzard from a year and a half ago that talks about all these same things is somehow like no one's going to touch it because it's radioactive.
Hmm.
Like,
Man,
I guess I'm
you
asking,
know,
where do I interface? How do I interface, or should I?
yeah, I mean, so one thing that I find very important when engaging is what is the intention
Mm-hmm.
behind the questions? Because this is actually very funny. There was a YouTube conversation I saw once between Blair White and Ben Shapiro
Mm.
that I found to be one of the best examples on how the difference between gender and sex is a real conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Because Ben Shapiro is like,
I
you
listen
know,
to Ben.
very,
I know,
yeah,
and not
well,
because
yeah, yeah,
I follow Ben. It's because
right, right,
I'm
right.
very
But
curious to know
Ben,
what the others are talking
Ben,
about.
Ben, Ben is not. Ben is definitely not pro-trans,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely, it's like, well, if you're born this way, it's what you are. Like, that
But he's
that's
very
that's how.
much he's very like a lot of his he doesn't talk about it as much as I feel he should, but a lot of his
Mm,
views are very theologically based. Like
yes, yes.
rooted deep in his
Well,
Jewish, like
and
he
like
wears a yarmulke all the time, like
yeah,
it's a
very
thing for him.
orthodox,
Yeah.
like
And
very orthodox Jew.
put in that
Um,
context,
mhm.
he makes more sense. It's just when you listen to Ben
Right,
Shapiro
right.
and you don't have that context, you're just like, this guy's crazy. It's like, oh,
Well,
hold up a
so
second. Like,
so he was basically saying all the Ben Shapiro things.
mm,
But are you familiar with Blair White?
no, I'm not actually.
She's a conservative mega trans woman.
Okay.
So like it's actually I think I actually thoroughly disagree with her on 95% of the things she says,
Mm,
except I find her insights on being trans almost more insightful because
mm,
because everything else we don't agree on. And it's
yeah, yeah.
like, but in the conversation with her and Ben Shapiro, Ben kept saying she and her to Blair White, like unconsciously. He would be like, well, yeah, if I see you, I'd call you a she, or
What does
like
Blair Wade identify as?
she is a woman.
Okay, so
Blair
she
White
and
is a
her.
woman. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Um, yeah, and so it just it was so funny because Ben Shapiro's like sticking to his guns, but then keeps referring to her as a woman because she appears as a woman, like she looks like a woman. There's literally no doubt that like where she is
Right.
in that. However, she wasn't always a woman, and so anyways, I know that's just like one very like glazed over example on how to process, but to get to the more specific thing about what you're talking about, which was about trans people involved in combat sports. I don't have a good answer, and I don't know if I'm the right person to even
Oh man,
be in the.
I am not
Well,
the right person. My only
yeah,
experience is that I've just watched.
yeah,
I listen. I would say 70% of the podcasts I listen to are fight based.
mm-hmm,
They're
mm-hmm.
interview. They're like some fighter has a podcast where they talk inside
Yeah,
baseball all the time, and this is a conversation that's happening enough in that community. And I gotta say,
mm-hmm,
there's no genuine animosity or sort of feeling of like we've got to oppress. Like they're just like let's
mm-hmm,
just make a transgender league. Like the MMA UFC should have a transgender category where like you know they're like at what point do we sort of try to merge all of the things that are scientifically biologically happening to you as a born male or a born
mm-hmm,
female, what's happening to you over the course of your life? How does that interface then with how we have weight classes, we have you know
mm-hmm.
somebody has a reach advantage. Like there are subtle differences between all of us. Somebody has a 74-inch reach advantage, that's going to be better than the person who has a 71-inch reach advantage. Like, but
Yeah,
when we hit this level of like who somebody is, that's where it gets like, no, fuck you, you can't tell me who I am. And this inability for us to sort of
yeah.
even embrace these conversations rationally before we erupt into somebody's a
I
fascist, man, it
So
just.
I've got a real question.
Mm-hmm,
So there are a couple of trans fighters that you've mentioned.
Hmm.
What is their opinion on all of
Well,
this?
the only one I know of is Fallon Fox.
Yeah,
And just to be clear, I'm not like an expert on Fallon Fox or
yeah,
trans fighters, but I think the general consensus, if I were to paint with a broad enough brush here, is that
hmm,
most fighters, when they enter into, I mean, there's a few crazy ones who are like, yeah, I would fight with a glass bottle and like the best man or woman wins, like that's it. And I think there are some fighters who would say that men and women should be able to fight against each other if they
yeah,
both consent. I think the vast majority, the plurality of fighters are like, no, even the least trained man has some advantage over a trained woman just by sheer body mass and
mm,
the way things work. Like, but on the whole, I think everybody's supportive. Like they want people to feel like, man, you want to be in this sport? Awesome, great. I'll train with
mm,
you. I'll do all
mm.
the things. I'm just not going to get in the ring in this sanctioned event with you and let you squash my head like a watermelon. Like that's not
Mm.
what I'm going to let you do. And you, again, like I think Eddie Izzard says the same thing. It's like there should be transgender categories in weightlifting. But again, it's like we're in the infant stages. How do you judge that?
Mhm.
We don't know enough
Yeah,
yet. Like it's
I mean,
complicated. But
I
I think
think,
disclosure. I think disclosure and transparency is the thing that I think most fighters like. If I'm going to walk in a ring with somebody who's transgender, that's on me to accept.
yeah,
That's not on me to find out later that you've had 32 years of testosterone pumping through your body, and that's why your muscle mass is the way it is.
mm,
Like no matter how much estrogen you've been on for 2 or 3 years, it doesn't take away from 32 years of like building a structure of your body that
mm,
is scientifically. And I think Joe Rogan, where he gets a lot of shit,
hmm,
is like, there's
hmm.
nothing I know more on this planet. He's like, I know less about podcasting than I do about fighting. And he's like, and I get paid $100 million a year to podcast. I know
Yeah,
about fighting, and you cannot tell me that there's no difference between men and women. That's where like I feel like this rationality on these conversation breaks down because
hmm,
people see that as like, well, he's not seeing everybody as equal. It's like, oh, okay. I think
yeah.
we're not seeing
I
these on levels here.
I think yeah, there's a lot of nuance to it. It's the honest the honest to God thing, man, is I think sometimes we have these like cartoon character versions of what individuals are or who
Mm-hmm.
they represent.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, like I know I don't want to do this one, but I'm gonna do it.
Do it. Do it,
It's
Dorian.
like I have a lot of friends who are transgender and they tend to be like super dope people who are very open to having hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't it's like I think the space should just be opened up to have the dialogue and I think people would show up.
I have students in my experience, I've had some
Mhm,
students who are more aggressive than others on this front, but
mhm,
in terms of students being non-binary or trans or having, wanting
mhm.
to be called by different pronouns, I've tripped over it a million times. I said
Yeah.
somebody she when they were they on a concert stage in front of like 400 people. Like I've made the mistake and I've apologized afterwards and almost I would say 99% of the time it's been like, oh, I didn't even notice. Like, what do you mean you
Yeah.
didn't even notice? Even if you're lying to me, you're being polite, which I appreciate. Which means
Yeah.
to me that you're actually seeing this as a longer relationship than one transaction of me introducing
Mhm,
you on a stage. Like, oh, cool,
mhm.
that's awesome. Except when you go on social media, you see someone say a teacher responded or called me they instead or she instead of he or something, and it's like
Yeah.
it feels like this crucifiable offense. And like I just like I don't know. I guess I just don't. My sense is that social media is winning and the face to face interactions are losing. And
Yeah.
that's so
Yeah.
scary to me, Dorian.
Yeah. I mean, Oy, it's I don't know if if there really is an answer yet. I guess like so what do you want? What's like like
I love you're the first person in all of these podcasts to be like, hold up a second, bro.
yeah
What do you want out of
yeah
this?
what do you want?
That's a great question. Actually, I want to ask you the same thing. But I'll
Yeah
go first.
yeah
To
yeah yeah
me, I want there to be a sort of, you know how like when you open up Facebook, it says "What's on your mind?" Like there's a default premise that we all, whether we tacitly agree with it or even are aware of it, we are all agreeing to say, here's what's on my mind, Facebook. Like there's a premise upon which we're all acting. Mm-hmm. I feel like since I graduated and social media became one of the other main ways in which we communicate, I feel like the reasonable person standard has gone out the window. Like there's no sense that the person on the other end is a reasonable person. And that when they say something like, I don't understand, I feel like there should be other weight classes. There should be other classes for transgenders. Very quickly, and I think, and I fall victim to this too. I see somebody post something that's even moderately supportive of Trump, and I'm all of a sudden like, you love Ivanka. I'm like, that's not a rational reaction I'm having. But like, I think the reasonable person standard has gone out the window. And I want to know how to get it back. I want to admit out loud that I'm not good at applying it to the people I'm seeing, and that includes yourself, because I see something you post, and I feel like you're unreasonable enough that you have a ring of more unreasonable people around you, like orcs that are just waiting to kill me. And so, like, bro, in 3.5 seconds, I make that decision and I go whoop, past Dorian. Like, I just keep swiping past, and then I message you like, we should do a podcast, Yeah. Like, because I'm a pussy and I don't want to get on your page and do anything about it. But like, the reasonable person standard has gone out the window. How do we get that back? Yeah. Or do you agree that that's even something that's gone out the window?
I don't think it's gone out the window. I think it's actually just more exposed. I mean, you and I grew up in Republican households, and I would say that processing a lot of things. Like Democrat was a bad word in my house. It was
always the Democrat Party.
Yeah. Well, like, how the liberals are. And
I heard the phrase we're what's right with America. I heard that phrase more often than not in my household.
Or the silent majority. That's another one. Or just even I don't know, like all of the fascinating, I'll just say this is my nice way of processing it, but the fascinating justifications for horrific war crimes. And like, well, when it's your life or the other life, sometimes you just gotta make that hard call. And it's like, I'd hear these kinds of things, and then I joined the military, and it was like, it's not quite that like movie version.
It's a lot more boring and actually way scarier than you think.
well, it's like, it's also a lot more like, it's less dangerous in some ways than people think, and it's also like more insanely dangerous than other people think, and it's just like, but so anyways, I feel like I've heard irrational thoughts that were just completely spoken as if it was like the unquestionable truth. And to the point where when I started asking questions, like I didn't even know what answer I was looking for, but I would just ask a question. It would be immediately like shut down. Like, oh, don't, like, so, I'm going to kind of shift this to something we were sort of speaking about, but didn't actually dig into. But so first off, if I could have my way, like what my goal is, and this is a very existentialist way of looking, is I'm very interested in individual healing, meaning that the individual looks inward to see what is going on in their processing. And it's really amazing how if you want to help change the world, you have to internalize what you're doing to cause harm. And so the three areas that I think need the most work on the individual is, first one's really dark or heavy, but the first one is the acceptance of death. The acceptance that it's
I am stuck on one. Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
I'm writing these down, but I'm never going to get off of one. So count me out for number 2 and 3.
But the acceptance of our mortality, I'll put it that way. Yeah. Meaning that it will happen. Like there's the Louis C.K. joke. It's like, the Louis C.K. joke where he's like, you know what? There's more dead people than living people. Like, what do John F. Kennedy, Adolf Hitler, and Jesus Christ have in common? They're all fucking dead.
Ain't none of my dad dying of ALS looked at me right in the eye. He's like, "Ain't none of us getting out of this alive." I was like, "Motherfucker, God damn!"
Yeah.
You could have been like, "Live your life to the fullest." No,
Right,
Dad, you
right.
said the least inspirational thing ever.
Well, so facing mortality, the second part is coming to terms with the need to be right or the need to be correct. And the third part is coming to terms with our own insecurities, not feeling like we're good enough or not, those three things. When you start to really internally analyze them, either through, like a mindfulness practice or meditation practice or even a spirituality or a religion, when you start to face these things, it kind of loosens up certain aspects. Like, we all have holes in the way we see the world. um you know I was not a fan of Joe Biden at all, but saw Donald Trump as so much more of a threat that after Bernie stepped out, I, all of a sudden became a Biden person. Like, I'd get into different spaces and, just be like, hey, I don't like trust all these policies, but we're literally facing an authoritarian right now. Things are worth, like, I was on a call. This is going to be the most Dorian Wallace statement, I think, of this whole podcast. But I was on a Zoom call with a whole bunch of Rojavan revolutionaries.
Yeah, you were. Of course you were.
Yeah. And we were like, but like it was a Q&A kind of thing. Yeah. But I was just on it because I love Rojava and I really stand for what they stand for. But the question came up. It was like, what do you think of the U.S. election? And these like Kurdish revolutionaries who were literally on the front line against ISIS, they were like, though we will never say that a Biden victory would be beneficial for us in certain material needs, he is much more predictable and much easier to work with than the sociopath Donald Trump. So we give our support to Joe Biden. And like, my head exploded where it was like, fucking Rojavan revolutionaries just basically said Biden Harris 2020.
Well, this is sorry. Go ahead. No. Go ahead.
So, I actually wanted to dig into this a little bit with you on the spirituality side of things, where so I became a very hardline atheist as a response to my religious upbringing. It was the way I kind of put it is on a popular front or on a popular philosophy, I say atheist as a way to make a clear stance that I am not a part of any organized religion. However, in an actual nuanced conversation, I'm an agnostic because I don't know anything. I don't know what's right. I don't know what's wrong. I know that I don't trust the church teachings as the way that I was taught them. But I also think there's a lot of good in the church teachings. And it was actually the humans that I had the problem with and not the teachings themselves. And just learned a really interesting concept where it was actually a podcast I was listening to a couple days ago where it was a Buddhist and a Sufi Muslim talking about religion and the way they were dividing. These were both scholars in their religions, but the way they were speaking about it was they were actually putting a division. And this is a generalized division. Like, this isn't like you're this, therefore that. But they were actually putting it as orthodox versus mysticism. And it like blew my mind because they were like, the orthodox, there's a separation. There's a need to worship or to follow like a criteria. But on the mystical side, it's about becoming one with and becoming open to and learning like, and it just like, it kind of hit me. It was like, holy fuck, like I am down with mysticism. Like, my entire problem has always been the dogmatic view of these things, but like I actually have zero issue with the teachings of Christ. I have zero issue with the Buddha, like you know, especially looking at them in a historical context or anything. It's like I
Yeah.
don't have a problem with anything that they're about. And in fact, like there's one guy I know who is one of the best humans I know, and he is completely doing it as part of his mission work for being a Christian. He does homeless action. He's gets medical supplies and food and mental health resources. He's
Right.
out every day, like that's his full time job, and he's got a great social media account. He'll literally post selfies of him with like some like Church of Satan people, and like he's like, yeah, I met these Satanists, they were great. And like, and he's like such a cool guy that whenever I have like a negative internal cringe response to Christianity, I have to remind myself that it's actually associated to the unquestioning dogmatism that I was raised around, and it's not actually the religion itself. I don't know if that makes any sense,
It makes
but
total sense. I am in enough of a left leaning sort of career where the idea that I do Bikram yoga is scandalous. Like that is a because of Bikram Chowdhury or whatever his name is. Like,
yeah,
which to be quite honest, I know very little about. Like I don't know about his. I know that was a bit of a creeper and had sex with some of his clients and his students and what have you. That does not mean that doing 90-minute Bikram yoga isn't awesome for me. Like, and to be able to separate those two things as two separate, it's like asparagus makes your pee smell, but it's also good for you. Like there's you should be able to hold two thoughts in your head.
yeah,
It's like Jesus, the teachings of, like, find me a teaching of Jesus where applied in almost any tense human situation right now in 2020 where that wouldn't at least be a thing to ponder. You may not need to do it, but you should, you could at least be like, should I turn the other cheek? Should I be nice to this person? Should I thank them for their aggression and move on with my life? Like, those are all totally you may get punched in the face, you may regret it, but at least those are better responses than just immediately swinging a punch. The problem is that you have Joel Osteen and you have Creflo Dollar and you have these other sort of mega churches who refuse to open their doors to people during floods and hurricanes in Houston and Texas. And so like it becomes, and they've got 501c3 status. And now anyone with a 501c3 status who's a church is bad. Like that's how quickly we jump to my wife. I'm in a new music group. I've been in minivans enough where everybody, 3 out of the 4 people in the van are saying all churches should have their 501c3 status revoked. Meanwhile, we're a percussion quartet that has 501c3 status. Like, what the fuck are we? Are we responding to earthquakes in Haiti, motherfuckers? That's not what we're doing. Like, so percussion isn't down there like helping to rebuild water lines when Haiti's shit explodes during an earthquake. That's the Catholic Church.
You're not
So
running a soup kitchen every Saturday,
and you should rightfully be upset about the child molestation hiding the Catholic Church. All of that is, but again, two thoughts in your big old brain, and ask yourself, like, how can you make that same statement in a minivan, knowing full well that my wife is a pastor and her church is not the same as Joel Osteen's church, and that there are levels to this, like there's first degree, second degree, third degree, and involuntary manslaughter. We have all of those. Why? And it took us hundreds of years to get there. We used to just behead somebody for stealing something. And then we were like, no, well, that's a little crazy. Let's just cut off their hand. That's a little more. And there's like, well, the hand thing's a little intense. He literally just took a churro from that lady. Like, all right, maybe just a finger. Then maybe we'll make them wear a letter. Like, all of these, like, we have figured this out. Why? I guess this is my biggest thing. With social media, with all of this, I feel like we're back in, like, the Roman ages where, like, somebody messes up, it's like, throw them in the Colosseum with the lions. It's like, why are you not able to connect these things? Like, they're all related.
The thing I will say, though, is, like, I was following, I follow comedy as I think you do as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that I said I think you do as well, knowing, how you're saying people fully know your wife is a pastor. I fully know you're completely into comedy. But yeah, so there's a lot of the conversation that I'll see is like comedy has never been this censored before.
Yeah.
And well, first off, like, I don't think that's even objectively true, because Lenny Bruce was literally arrested and tried for his comedy. There is a law that George Carlin is in the Supreme Court because of his seven words you can't say on television bit. Like, it's like, that has not happened in the the last couple of years. I've not seen one comedian get arrested and taken to court and have the Supreme Court have to talk about So that's the first part. But the second part is the comedians that will get cited. It's like Dave Chappelle, Bill Burr, Louis C.K., and it's like Louis had a special after his allegations, like, that was put up on Netflix, and Dave Chappelle, his special won the Emmy this year, and Bill Burr just got a gig in The Mandalorian. Like, it's like their careers didn't die even remotely. They were shunned a bit, but like nothing actually happened in the larger, or I don't know. It just,
no, I mean, I guess the question though is how many other comedians who don't have the cover that Dave Chappelle and Louis C.K. and Chris Rock and
that is a good point.
Like, how many other, and I guess I'm not asking like how many comedians many comedians aren't being, God, how do I even say this without coming off like an asshole? How many comedians are not pushing the boundaries or exploring new artistic territories because they see that if Dave Chappelle is going to get a huge backlash because of some transgender jokes he did, and Dave Chappelle's a billionaire or a millionaire, and like has like he lives outside of Cincinnati and is building his own club right now. Like, he's fine. But for me, Joe Blow, living in New York or living in Des Moines, Iowa, trying to start my stand-up career, I'm not even going to touch that material because it's not worth it. Now, maybe it's not worth it. Maybe that material's not great. But as an artist, I guess this is my thing. Like, what's the unintended damage we're seeing or consequences we're seeing of people not being, I would venture to say even trans comedians not feeling comfortable to comment on certain things within their own field because of the way things are perceived. I guess I'm just like in the arts world, for example, like anybody using, we talked about Steve Reich to begin with, like anybody using an African bell pattern now moving forward, if they are privy to that argument around Steve Reich and what happened around a comment he said, why would I even attempt to be influenced by West Africa right now, knowing that something I said 50 years ago on social media might be blown up in a way? Like, I guess I'm just wondering what is the effect on art or on people in terms of how they create stuff, and is it good or bad? I don't know.
I'll put another one out there. We're just much more aware of marginalized groups, which is, I don't know, man. Like, so I just did a project with a Black woman. We co-collaborated composing a piece during COVID, and it was, I'm not going to front, it was one of the best collaborations I've ever been involved with.
Who was it?
Because
do you mind saying?
Sorry.
Who was it? Do you mind saying?
Bonita Oliver. She's a performance artist. Really, really incredible.
And why was it so awesome?
Well, at the very beginning, we established a relationship that we could talk about anything. Awesome. I'm talking like anything. And there were points in our dialogue where she was like, that was really racist, what you just did. And it literally was okay, how come? Like, what, like, can you give me insight? And she was like, you did this? Like, well, I'll tell you the specific situation. Yeah, I'll actually tell you like what it was instead of making it abstract. We did a Zoom performance. And when she and I have a good jam relationship, which y'all should check out on YouTube. But she and I have a good improvisational language because we both have a lot of influence from the avant-garde, but we also have a lot of influence from jazz and blues and that sort of setting. And so one of our sessions, just privately, we had ended up getting into Strange Fruit. She ended up singing those lyrics, and it was just this
What's
really
Strange Fruit?
powerful.
Sorry, I don't.
Yeah, it was this really powerful moment. So
Sorry.
we were.
What is Strange Fruit?
Oh,
You said
oh
that
my
as a.
goodness.
Please
Sorry.
talk to me like I'm two.
Yeah, so Strange Fruit, it's a song made famous by Billie Holiday about lynchings.
Aha. Okay. Great.
And the strange fruit is the bodies in the
Hanging
in
from
the
the trees.
trees.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Great.
it's so yes. So anyways, it was this powerful experience when we did it in our private jam session via Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
But then we got asked to perform. There's these open improvisation sessions that Marina Kieferstein, I can never remember how to pronounce it, but
Okay.
she runs those open improv sessions on Facebook Live. And so Bonita and I did one. And like before, I was like, hey, do you think we could do Strange Fruit? And she was like, you want to do Strange Fruit? And I was like, yeah, like it was so cool. And she was like, okay, we'll do it. And she was like real hesitant, but I wasn't picking up on it, which I will call ignorance or privilege, if you want to say it. I wasn't picking up on the fact that she was incredibly uncomfortable. Anyways, we do it, we're playing, and it's sounding fucking dope. And she starts to read a poem by, I'm not going to remember her name, but uh, a poem from the 1940s from an African American woman poet. I'll find the name and try to send it to you.
Okay.
But anyways, while she did that without thinking, I did the power fist in the air. And so that was it. That's all it was on my side of it. A couple days go by, and she's like, we're like talking about our collaboration. We're having our meeting, and we start talking about the jam session that was in front of all these people. And she was like, yeah, I was like really uncomfortable. Like that was really not cool. And I was like, what
That
how
you did
so?
this.
The whole thing. We started talking about it. And so I'll tell you both of our biases. Hers was, I don't want to say that I'm speaking for all Black people. I don't want to say that. And I was like, don't worry about me translating this as I have a Black friend, so therefore all Black people. Like, it was like, please, like, tell me, like, you are my friend. Like, tell me what you are feeling. And on the reverse of it, I had to literally hear her go, that was really racist. It seemed like you were exploiting me because I'm a Black woman, that you wanted to do this incredibly traumatizing song. And then at the end of it, you felt okay to do the fist. What does the fist mean to you? So we start talking about it. And it was like, I go to a lot of protests, and like, that's a normal thing. I've done it in groups of white people. And she was like, that makes sense. She's like, I actually know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And so we start getting into it, and it gets into it's about the context. And so like, it actually got to this point where it was like, all right, I got to ask, was it cultural appropriation? And she was like, yeah, it was.
To her,
And
it was. Yeah.
yeah, it was. And so we talked it through.
To
and
her,
that's
it was.
how
In that moment, it was.
it was context oriented. And the whole thing is that we had that level of nuance, and I am going to tell you that she and I were so fucking uncomfortable. Like, it wasn't even like I was uncomfortable and she wasn't. Like, we were both like, oh man, like because she, in her side of it, like when we talked about it after the fact, she was like, I'm gonna tell this white man that he was racist. Like, I'm just, and
Let's not.
that
Yeah.
does
Let's
not.
not assume that's an easy position to take for anyone.
Right. Well, and so like, think about the responses that, had that conversation happened on social media, how complex that could have gotten. And how, but
and
so anyways,
how little true honesty would have actually come to the surface. I'll bet the two of you would not have gotten to where you got if it was happening in the context of somebody else being able to chime in and be like, this guy is a colonizer. It's like, well, as soon as that word is in the room, nobody can talk. Like, and that's not like, and I think it's important for you to have a conversation with your friend first, because I have a room full of steel drums. I have these conversations to different degrees than what you're talking about in the steel band world. And I feel like I bring up the fact that I'm white more often than they do, as a way to be like, I want you to know that I'm thinking about this. And I keep saying it, like, I want you to know that, like, I'm aware what I'm bringing to the table. And I don't want you to change anything you're doing. I want me to just be at the table and not have that ruin the whole goddamn spread that we've all set up here, you know? But then it's like, but sometimes when I say that that's, like, I am pulling up a seat at the table, it ruins the whole goddamn spread for everybody. Like, like I've sat down and been like, I'm put up my white placemat just so you all know I'm here. And it's like, and they all, bro, I've been doing this for like 10 years and I feel a responsibility to somehow cop to something. But the response back I get is often like, wrap it up, bro. We know what you're saying. And like, that's always when I do it in public. When I do it privately, the conversations happen way quicker and they're way more efficient. And so, like, I think, I'm just saying, like, I feel like these conversations, I wish these conversations could happen in private, but publicly, where no one else could chime in. And we were just watching you and Bonita have this out so that I wish that was a function of social media where you could say, Dorian Wallace, like, Dorian Wallace is having a conversation at 12 o'clock, and it's just the two of you. No one can chime in. You can't like it. You can't put a heart. You can't put the huggy heart thing. You can't put the crying emoji. Nothing.
The angry face,
But what you can watch is two people who truly care about each other talk through some bullshit.
Yeah, I mean, you know, so just to go back to the Steve Reich situation and so we are now at a phase where we're much more aware of things. You know, the specific Bonita conversation that I just referenced, that was I left that jam session like, wow, that was pretty fucking cool, and just like left. And she had like days of sitting with it and being like, oh my God, I work with white people and they, you know, they'll be super nice, they'll be super great, and then they just see me as a black woman and they just want to do things about being black. And like, and you know, that was where my social elevation, you know, like, I'm trying to use a word that's not privilege just for whatever reason, but it was one of those, like, it was an eye opener. It was like the fact that I could literally get off that thing and just like go hang out with my wife, like watch Netflix.
The fact that she said to you, what does this mean to you? Like, and the idea that you had a very quick answer is, again, like, I have these things too. It's like, it's proof that it doesn't mean anything to you. Like, it's like the fact that your answer was so quick is like, oh, okay, actually, I'm glad I asked. Like, you have like, to me, the very first person when I was 20 years old, I went to Trinidad. The very first person who ever told me about the Black Power movement was a Trinidadian man wearing full army fatigues and a black beret with the patch. And I'm like, I have zero context. I'm just like, there's a rando behind me wearing army fatigues. What a kook, you know? And I'm in Trinidad. I'm 21, and I'm like, give me a beer, you know? And and then he explains to me the context around what's happening, and that only 25 years ago, 30 years ago, that the Black Power movement in Trinidad and how it sort of coincided with the Black Power movement in the United States and blah, 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 and all the politics going on in Trinidad and Dr. Eric Williams in the 50s and like all of these things. It's like, oh, now I understand. But that's the reason for me that holding this up is like, I know there's some like 70-year-old Trinidadian man. Some 70-year-old Trinidadian man showed me in 2001 that I clearly didn't know enough about why that patch on his fatigues was a fist. I didn't understand enough about that to just like, I just felt like, all right, well, I just won't ever use it, but bro, you do you. Like, I'm going to go back to Akron, Ohio after this and play John Cage. Like, I'm 19. I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. And now 20 years later, when I see people in a protest out doing this, I understand why. I get it. And I empathize. And I want people to feel empowered to support how they want to support. But I will never be in a crowd of people doing this unless that man in the fatigues is beside me and says, yeah, it's fine. Or I'm with Kendall Williams or Jerry Guy or somebody else in the pan community who says, no, it's okay. Like, that's when I would be out like this. But for the last 10 months, I've been terrified to even like say that out loud. Like that somehow is
Yeah.
like sacrilege, or I think Dorian did something wrong. It's like that's not true. It's just, we all identify with this stuff in different ways, and it's
Yeah.
fascinating to me
Yeah.
how it manifests now in 2020 in different cultures. And I know we only have 15 minutes here before we got to let you go back to Ildiko because she's way more important. But Dorian, I don't know if we've solved any problems here, but with
Oh
these
no,
last
no, absolutely not.
with these last 15 minutes, I kind of want to just ask you. I texted you and sort of being like, let's leave this as a podcast of like, let's ask a question and hopefully people can feel like there's some hope or some path. Like let's hack away the first 3 feet of the path we want people to go down. For you, what do you feel is like going into 21? What do you feel you did well, and what do you feel you need to do better or differently moving into 2021 in terms of how you correspond with people, how you interface with the world, how you personally process your anxiety about all of those things? Like, what are some things you personally want to do differently?
Hi. Well,
Other than making sure your kid is alive at the end of the year.
right,
That's
right,
that's
right.
the,
Yeah.
that's at the top of the list. Fuck everything else.
Yeah.
Diversity
Other,
to hell.
other than
If
like
your kid needs
the,
fed, you feed your kid.
yeah, yeah. Other than parenting responsibilities.
Yeah.
No, I mean, so I'll start with the things that I think need improved. It's hard to gauge how when the right time to be aggressive and when the right time to be passive is. And I'll say realistically, I think 70% of the time, I feel like I'm pretty good. But there's a 30% of the time where it's like, wow, I just like ripped that person apart when I shouldn't have, or took this like way too personally. Like it's still very much there. And I don't know if you can hear the baby in the background
Oh yeah,
now.
yeah. She's like, Papa, it's time. Wrap it up.
Yeah. But
No, cool. Free speech is good, Dad, but I
yeah,
gotta eat.
yeah. So I think it's just the everlasting question of like how can I be better to other people, and also be even more self-reflective. So what I thought I did do well is you know man this is dark, but I actually lost I'll just say three white male friends due to politics, and these are people who typically would be aligned, but it was particularly about the first group. It was all about identity politics, and the first individual that I had an falling out with, it was because they were talking about something on their wall about diversity training. And I was like, yeah, I mean, like I got on it, I commented, and there were all these like really far right people on there that were saying some pretty horrific stuff, but my friend got it in on me. Like he like honed in on just like really like verbally assaulting me, and he sent an apology like after the fact, and I didn't respond. And then he sent another apology and I didn't respond. And he tagged me in something on social media and like was like, "Oh, I see you're posting on Facebook, but you won't respond."
You playing hard
Anyways,
to get, bro.
yeah, well, so I like, and keep in mind, like, like aside from the fact that like I was irritated with the dude, it's like I also like had a child that was about to be born, and like it was like, man, I don't like have time to address this like further. Like it's, but anyways, I finally like wrote him back and was like, man, I'm not upset with like the questions you were asking. I was upset that you like got so into it with me, saying that like I don't think it's that big of a deal, versus the people who were like, oh my god, the commie Jews are taking, like that kind of insane stuff. The second group was more left-wing oriented people who got mad at me for throwing support towards Joe Biden,
Mm-hmm.
and and they thought that my support of the like White Fragility, that book by Robin DiAngelo, they felt my support for any of that was just keeping class consciousness like separated. And
Mm.
it literally ended like one of the guys I haven't spoken to, he like kind of was just like, I'm done. And, you know, out from my perspective, threw a temper tantrum.
I've had lots of
Blah, blah.
arguments about white fragility, but none that have ever divulged into me ending a friendship over.
Well,
Like
that was the
that's not
thing. It
my
was,
my
it
bag.
was, I found out by the friendship ending that he was upset about my views.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I didn't even know, but it was a group of two of them that were sort of in the same
Yeah,
category.
yeah,
And so anyways, I actually, well, just the reason I brought this up was it was actually due to my relationship with composing with Bonita, as well as just many of the artists that I've been working with and having these kinds of conversations, like the one you and I are having, where I could not, in good faith, not speak up during certain things,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how these people who I now have heard so much more about their inner world, how they're affected by by this dialogue,
Right, right.
um, and sort of this like, I'll call it like very black and white assessment of very nuanced positions. You know, like just like the fact that me calling into question something was enough to end the friendship, not on my end, but on the other end,
Yeah, yeah.
I thought was relatively insightful. Where it was like, why don't we like if we're pushing this like free speech, open dialogue thing, why? Anyways,
Yeah.
this is supposed to be a way. What did I do well? I'm not happy about losing friendships, but
Yeah.
I actually felt good about using empathy to engage with a larger community than the
Mm.
people I was the most directly related to.
Yeah.
And made it made some insecurities arise that I'm willing to address, you know, if it comes, if the opportunity arises.
Yeah.
It just hasn't yet. And just to point out, like these three people I just mentioned, they're not anybody I would have actually any like I'm completely open to rekindling a friendship because I really do feel it was,
Yeah.
you know, on their end, and then
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it
Plus, it
was
was
like
on
after
social
getting,
media, so like
yeah,
it kind
exactly,
of doesn't really count until you have it out over a beer. Like,
exactly.
and I mean, this is the thing for me. I wish that I was braver
Mm,
at saying what I truly believe. I'm going to put that out there for 21.
yeah.
I wish that I stand behind what I believe.
Hmm.
I'm still scared at 41 years old of saying Steve Reich is not a racist. Like, I can say Steve Reich may have said something in 1971 that was off base from the way we currently see the world, and
Hmm.
maybe in the 1971 where, you know, but I have more pieces to the Steve Reich puzzle than most people. It's
Hmm.
just true. I've just been around him more. I know more. I've been in private situations where if anyone's going to say something shitty, that's when it's going to come out. Is when you're alone and no one's around. And Steve's been nothing but supportive, you know. But when stuff was blowing up around Steve, I was terrified to defend him, and that is something that I regret. It's something I know that if I was 85 years old, and somebody was out there saying Josh Quillen was a piece of shit and never wanted to talk to anyone outside of his own idea sphere, like I would hope that Dorian Wallace would feel like he could come to social media and be like, listen, you all may be upset about something he said 20, 30 years ago, but I've been in the room with Josh more often than all of you, and you don't
Hmm.
have to believe me, but I'm just going to say
Hmm.
I think he's a net positive. That statement in September could have lost me my job. It could have lost me a lot of friendships. It could have lost me a lot, like caused me a lot of stress on social media. But I
Mm.
believe it.
I have
Like it's a statement from my end that I feel like I can say a lot of things now, months after the Reich thing, where I feel
mhm,
like I could be like, no, 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 you're wrong. You're just
mhm.
wrong. Like
Yeah.
it's okay. You may be wrong about your feelings about someone aren't proof of anything, and your
Mhm.
feelings about a page out of a book that somebody published, it even if Steve said those words verbatim, okay, let's let's evaluate him on the same playing field we would all hope to be evaluated on, which is on your whole lifetime, your whole output. And
Mm.
for me, it's just like I was afraid to defend somebody I stood behind, and that disappointed me more about me as a person than anything I have felt about myself up to this point.
I have a real question.
Yeah.
Just a what what do you mean you could have lost your job if you had defended Steve?
Well, I say that like to me that's like the end result is
Yeah.
social media spirals where somebody is emailing my bosses at Princeton or NYU. I had students
Mhm.
come to me and refuse to play clapping music because they didn't want to play a racist man's music.
Mm.
I handled it privately. I reprogrammed it, but a 3.5 minute, like, had I stood my ground and said, no, 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 we're playing Steve Reich's music and here's why, there was like 2 or 3 steps from that would have landed at my boss's email desk. And I made a decision back in September to be like, no, 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 no. Clapping music is not the piece that is not the hill I want to die on right now. I'll trust that history will sort of bear
Yeah.
this out. But at that moment, Dorian, now that we're December 30th, I was right. I
Mm.
am still right. That doesn't mean Steve Reich didn't say anything wrong. But my 18-year-old students who are reacting to Twitter are not right. They're just not. They have feelings, that's absolutely justified. But this divide that comes between those feelings and wanting to actually learn the truth, to me that's, and again, this is, I have the same thing. Like, I whenever I come up against the moment where I got to pick up the spade and start tilling the
Mhm.
soil,
Mhm.
fuck you, bro. I'm out. I'm gonna go drink a rum and coke. It's way easier, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and
So,
that's
oh,
for me why I said what I said.
wow. Yeah. So, I just want to tell you something about this that
Please, please do.
I'm curious what you think. So I teach the music for dancers course at Martha Graham,
Mm-hmm.
which is honestly like, man, it's a really cool gig because you're working with these high level artists, but
Yeah.
they're not musicians. So like, they don't know the difference between a xylophone and a snare drum. Like, but like they're like expert dancers,
Yeah.
and they're familiar with music like really well. They just don't know all the other stuff. But um, when the Steve Reich stuff was happening, I played them Steve Reich. I played drumming specifically, but used it as a talking point where it's like, okay, so this is some of where the music is inspired from. This is Steve Reich. I need to tell you all something, and I'd love to hear what you think about this. There's some controversy going on right now with this gentleman, and this is what it is. And this is all on Zoom. So I screen shared, the article, um, and was like, but we can't deny that he has been a major voice in my field for the last 50 years. Like, there wouldn't be dance accompanying that takes place the way it does right now had Steve not existed.
Mm.
So let's have this conversation. Like, I'm not going to agree with this quote of his, but I also am not going to pretend like that deletes everything. So like, what do you think? And I don't know. It just, obviously our circumstances were different because, well, Steve, where I do not. But then also, you were in a performance setting
Mm.
where mine was a classroom discussion setting.
Mm.
But I don't know. We didn't, I mean, it was the same thing. We didn't come to a conclusion, but I just, I didn't think writing off Steve Reich's music was the right thing, but I also didn't think it would be a responsible thing to like not mention that there's some major controversy happening. And so I'm just curious, like, what do you think of that?
Yeah.
Like, does that relate at all to the circumstance you found
Yeah, I
yourself
mean,
in?
it to me. I mean, listen, I you only get one shot at reacting to something that happens, and to me, my choice was like so is releasing. I know we're coming up on 1:30 here, so please tell me
Mhm,
if
mhm.
I heard your baby saying asking calling for her daddy. So if you got to sign off, just tell me.
We can jump off once this thought's
Okay.
finished. Yeah.
The So is releasing a Drumming at 50 project that we've
Mhm,
been planning for a couple years with Russ Hartenberger from Nexus and of Reichen musicians. And we did we recorded a new version of drumming with Russ and
mhm,
Nexus. And I was asked by Russ to do a series of interviews or conversations with a variety of people who were toured with Steve when drumming was premiered, just in Steve's orbit. Joan LaBarbera, Jay Clayton, Judy Sherman, Russ, Nexus, so like a whole Anna Teresa de
mhm,
Keersmacher. Like there's 42 people I've interviewed since August about Steve and about drumming and about the legacy and
mhm.
about sort of what their experiences were. Gavin Bryars from England, like
Oh wow.
he was one of my highlights. Actually, Gavin is awesome. He told the story about playing the Portsmouth Symphonia for Steve, and the only thing Steve said was "what" and "why," and it's like, oh, cool. Like this all makes more sense to me when you realize that Steve was just another composer in the room with Gavin and Michael Nyman and Russ, and they're all just in the room, sort of trading ideas. Like it's not any different than now at a new music gathering or bake sale or a So Percussion Brooklyn Bound or whatever. Like I had conversations like that since August. And my choice was to keep it private and be like, I am just going to catalog. I want to make sure that when I go public about this, when
Mhm,
I'm on the record about Steve publicly, that I stand behind it. So I'm not going to say anything publicly on social media about whether or not I think Steve's, and the thing about the Val Wilmer thing that was the most terrifying to me is that she said the word Steve ripped off Ghana. Like she said that. Steve ripped off
mhm.
music from Ghana, and here he is. Would you not be politicized? That was her quote. And I was like, oh my God, my entire career with So Percussion has been built on partially Steve Reich's music and in particular drumming. Like, have I built my career on a fallacy? The answer is no,
Hmm.
not at all. And I'll go to my grave with it. I have 42 interviews, and there's many more to add on to it. 2 with Steve. I'm not saying his legacy's not complicated. I'm not saying Steve was never inappropriate around people. Watch the Judy Sherman one. There were 5 years where Steve wouldn't talk to her in a green room because she quit his group. Like Dorian Wallace forms his own group and then somebody quits to go get another gig. You're telling me Dorian Wallace is going to be in the green room all chummy with that person that left their group? Like they're people. And has Steve's like but from where I'm sitting starting in February when this stuff is launched, I'm right.
Mhm.
I know I'm right. It's not complicated. Or it's not complicated. Sorry, it is absolutely. Sorry,
Not
it's
not
yeah.
not
I
not
like to
not.
speak in double negatives.
Yeah.
It's absolutely complicated.
Yeah.
But for people who say Duggadut was ripped off from an A-Way drumming group, you're wrong. You don't know what you're talking about, and you're wrong. That's it.
Mm.
I can say that. I know it for a fact. And if you want to have the keep having the conversation, oh Steve just appropriated everything from a master drumming ensemble. No, he didn't. Look at the piece. No, he didn't.
Mm.
Like, what do you want to talk about? Oh, phasing was stolen from Africa. No, it wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. It absolutely wasn't. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
to me, you can be upset at something Steve said in the 70s. That's okay. You can be
Yeah.
hurt by that. You cannot graph that. Like, if Frank Gehry had come out to be this enormous racist, you can't come out and say that his buildings are not important in some way. You can't come out
Hmm.
and say they're not structurally solid. You can't say that. Why? Because Disney Hall is still standing.
Hmm.
Like, to me, this like two thought thing where you can look at Steve Reich and be like, yeah, he absolutely was influenced heavily by West African culture, but also East African and South African and all of these weird, messy ways that's hard to piece together. But Judaism has had, I would say now, probably a larger impact on his music than West African music, or as large an impact in terms of the way he filters his thoughts through
Hmm.
Hebrew texts or all these different things. He's talked about Bartok and Palestrina and Elena and Periton as much as he's talked about John Coltrane or Aretha Franklin to me privately. And so, yeah, keep retweeting the page out of that Val Wilmer book all you want. You're wrong. And so, like, to me, that's... Nobody knows that. People will know it once this is out. But, like, in February, there's going to be a whole database of things released where I'm just asking people about their experience. And the whole thing is like, yeah, Steve is intense. He's told me he doesn't like what I've done 1,000,000 times. But it's all community. And it's new. Like, so to me, that's the thing where I'm lamenting a little bit is like, I made a choice. I didn't confront anybody on what I truly believed, and I feel like now I'm gonna be like, now I'm confronting you, and everybody's gonna be like, bro, we're not talking about that anymore.
Like, oh yeah, we figured that out, man.
Yeah, I'm gonna be the Japanese soldier on the island that comes out like 10 years after the war's over. I'm like, Steve Reich is good, and they're like, yeah, no, we thought through it, we were wrong. I'm like, oh, come on, you know.
It's like that episode of Family Guy where George W. Bush like shows up in the office, like ready to go to Vietnam. And it's like 1975. He's like, all right, when we...
Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, hey, yeah, bro, listen, your kid is crying, and I've kept you 5 minutes after. Please tell your partner I'm very sorry.
Oh, yeah, everything's cool. Baby's actually, she's not crying. She's reading a book right now, and she's excited.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Is it Steve Reich's music as a gradual process?
It's actually, it is very minimalist. It's black and white fish, like going in a stream together. And she's just like, wow, wow.
Are you going to play her Lamont Young next? Is that what you're going to do?
Actually,
Tom Johnson?
we do play a lot of pieces for her, like where it's just like, all right, today we're going to listen to to Coltrane's Love Supreme because you've literally never heard this before.
And you need to learn what bad tam-tam overdubs are. They just unmute the tam-tam and it's there with all of its white noise and glory. There's no fade, and there's no crossfade or anything. It just shows up. I remember like being in grad school and listening to that piece with a teacher and then him being like, this is so amazing. I'm like, listen, I don't know anything about sound editing, but couldn't they have just done that little cross thing? Like... or a timpani roll or something that came in.
It was Slayer's first album, I think Hella Waits, where they recorded the feet first and then they recorded the hands separately, and it was because like the producers said that that's how you should do it, and they just did it, and it like makes no sense. Like it's just like, why? Like I heard an interview with Dave Lombardo where he was like talking about that. It was like, yeah, we don't know why we did that, but we didn't know any better.
Anyway, well, listen, is there any sort of last final words to sort of leave people with here before we go into 2021 and pray for the best?
Stay safe out there, y'all. We didn't even actually get into it, but I have 2 family members right now who have COVID and one who probably has it, but we don't know yet, even though it's...
mentioned something about it, yeah.
Yeah, so... it's stressful, man. It's that's actually one of the reasons I'm taking the social media break is I need to focus on family right now. Yep. And, arguing with anarcho-capitalists about Austrian school of thought economics isn't like the best way to
perhaps
focus.
One would call it regrettable.
Yeah. Nobody wins. But yeah, so just be safe out there. This pandemic, oh, she is so cute. She wants to be on the podcast.
Bring her on.
Yeah. But no, just be safe out there. And, it's complicated. I think that, this pandemic has opened up a lot of wounds that I think we need to address healing. And then just one like final thought is the thing I keep thinking about this whole year is like, this situation would have sucked at any time, any point, anything. But out of all the fucking presidents to have during COVID-19, we have to have Donald Trump. Like,
there's a tiny part of me that's like kind of glad because if it was Bernie or Biden, both of them would have been killed by coronavirus by now. Somehow Trump has preserved himself with KFC and McDonald's, and like everybody's. This is the thing. Like we'll talk about it on other podcasts, but everybody's just like Trump's a piece of shit. It's like, Bernie is the most susceptible person in the United States to coronavirus. Bitch, keep him in a bubble. Are you kidding me? Like, let's not pretend like if he got in the hospital, he'd be just driving around being like, I'm okay. It's like, no, he'd be dead in 30 seconds.
Man, the tweet I read from Kyle Kalinske when Biden was the projected winner. Who we can't let the media. Sorry, that's all. We can have a whole podcast about conspiracy theories. But anyways, Kyle Kalinske tweeted. It was like, there's nothing more gangsta than Joe Biden sleeping his way to the White House. Like, I could not stop laughing.
That's the thing. Like, everybody's talking about like, oh, Bernie would be better, or Joe. It's like, listen, Joe Biden literally zoomed his way to the election and still won by 6 million votes. If he was actually campaigning, are you kidding me? This wouldn't have been. This wouldn't even have been a ball game. He did it with Zoom.
He won with like a video of him like eating an ice cream cone.
Joe Biden. Oh, he's so bad. Oh, really? He won by just putting the thumbs up emoji on the Zoom thing that we all that we all can here. Look, boom, Joe Biden. Look, now I got a thumbs up on my screen. Like, that's all he did for the campaign, and he still won. So yeah, Joe Biden is the worst. Yeah, that's another podcast. But
so I would say if we do another podcast, we should dig into conspiracy theories, because that is a subject I think you and I probably have an incredible wealth of knowledge.
I did one with my brother back in like April, and it was awesome. So I would love to do that with you, Dorian. So let's schedule. Well, hey man, you tell your partner I said thank you for your time.
Yes,
I really appreciate it. Tell your small one that she'll never get this time back from Daddy. And it's my fault. But stay safe and stay healthy, and I wish you a happy New Year. And I hope to share a beer in person.
Yeah, cool. Stay safe.
All right, thanks.
Good to talk to you. All right,
bye. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. This podcast is brought to you by Liquid Drum, liquiddrum.com down in Waco, Texas. My good friend Todd Meehan runs an amazing percussion company down there. Great merch, great content. Check him out, liquiddrum.com. Also, Kyle Dunleavy, dunleavypans.com, DUNLEAVY pans.com. Kyle Dunleavy makes and builds all the steel drums that I perform and teach on in So Percussion, as well as at NYU and Princeton. He's an amazing tuner builder, just a really nice guy, very dependable. Check him out. If you are interested at all in steel pan advocacy, want to learn more about the goings-on in pan in Brooklyn, check out paninmotion.com. My good friend Kendall Williams, Jerry Guy, Trisha Guy, and Arisha John run an amazing organization called paninmotion.com. Check them out. And finally, Alejandro Mirage runs an amazing clothing apparel company in Brooklyn that is steel pan centric. You can check him out at mangochow, CHOW, clothing.com. I own a bunch of his shirts. They're amazing, very stylish, beautifully made. Check them out. mangochowclothing.com. Okay, hope you're well. Talk to you soon. Bye.